The Podcast Engineering Show. This is episode... Actually, I'm not going to say the episode because it might be 1 or 2. We'll see. That's right. We're here. Finally, the show has kicked off. This is the Podcast Engineering Show. And I'm happy that you're here. I'm Chris Curran. And every week we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. That's right, we really do. We get down and dirty talking shop with podcast producers, engineers, and other specialists. And if you implement the best of what you learn here, your own podcasts will sound a lot better and you'll spend less time producing them. This show is brought to you by 2 ventures that I'm a part of. The first one is the school, Podcast Engineering School, which offers training to help you launch your podcast or to master your sound and even to teach you how to have a career as a podcast producer or engineer. So the podcastengineeringschool.com and also Fractal Recording. This is my production company where I produce podcasts for networks, authors, and companies, including Dun & Bradstreet. And I just landed a huge network as well, which I can't announce yet. How annoying is that? Although when I do announce it, it's gonna be awesome. So on this episode, we are gonna speak to Mary and Blake Larsen. They are podcasters. Period. Of course, okay, they do other things too, all right? They're parents, Mary's a musician, and Blake makes donuts, among other things. I'm sure he makes breakfast too. Blake, do you make breakfast too?
Every Sunday, pancakes.
Oh, you're one of those Sunday breakfast guys?
Yes, sir. That's the way it is, my family. We make it to the Beatles every Sunday.
Oh, that's so cool. See, I'm married to an Indian woman, so I don't cook at all.
Lucky man.
We're going to start this show with the speed round. All right, and this is the thing here. If you're listening to this, have you ever heard a podcast and the first question that's asked is, so tell us way back when, why did you get involved in such and such, and what made you, and then the guest goes on and on. I don't prefer that. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't prefer it, so we're going to do a speed round here. I'm going to ask you guys 3 questions, and see, you are a couple, so you could probably have 30 seconds each for the answers. See, it's not just...
Ooh.
Yeah, you each get to answer if you want. So let's get right into it. I want to know about the shows that you are producing and engineering and hosting. I think you host all your shows as well, right?
We do. We're like a 2-man show. But I'm a woman, so I'm going to say a 2-person show. Yeah, so we have 3 podcasts. The first one is called ParentCast. Very creative name. It's about parenting.
Nice.
Who would have ever guessed? Exactly. So we host and produce and do that. The second show is called The Living Reminders, and that is all about the show The Leftovers on HBO. It's a really interesting show that makes you question life and death and all these great, crazy things. It makes you really depressed. But it's a great show to talk about. So we talk about it with microphones in front of our faces. And then the third show that we do a podcast about is called OutlanderCast. And that is about another TV show called Outlander, which is on Starz currently. And that is like this sci-fi, fantasy, love, historical, amazing, amazing show based upon a book series under the same name, Outlander.
Oh, wow. See... I wish I had a bell. The ding, 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 you win. That was such a great, nice and tight, concise answer. So, by the way, in the show notes of this episode, I'm going to have links to all your shows. But where can people go to maybe see something on the web?
Okay, so if they want to see everything that we do, it's under the umbrella of Tall Mom Media. So I'm a tall mom. I'm like almost 6 feet, and people are always like, wow, you're wicked tall, because in Rhode Island, people are generally short. So I stand out like a sore thumb. So that's how we came up with the name Tall Mom Media. So tallmommedia.com, you'll be able to find all of our podcasts. We also have blogs dedicated to these podcasts and to these same shows. So tallmommedia.com is the place to go.
That's so cool. And when I thought about interviewing you guys, I went and listened to one of your shows, and I was like, their voices sound pretty dang nice, so I want to hear about how you're doing it. So, second question in the speed round is your workflow. I want to know how you do this, from recording an episode all the way to mastering it, right before you publish it. Give me the overview of your workflow. Blake, you want to take this one?
Yeah, actually, this is my territory. Mary is actually the talent, and I'm the nerdery behind everything.
I start by pouring myself a glass of wine, taking off my bra, and having a grand old time.
Holy cow!
That's right. I used to be on TV, and you know what? Doing makeup and hair, I would much rather sit with a glass of wine, no bra, and just relax with a microphone in front of my mouth.
Wow.
It's that kind of show today.
Okay,
Oh,
terrific.
sorry. Sorry, Chris.
Hey, way to class up the job.
Well, nothing like keeping it lively.
So again, this is my territory. So what we do is we essentially we do it in a little difficult way. We record into GarageBand, and then we save it at the highest rate possible, and then I'll take that file, and then I will put it into Adobe Audition, and then I'll make all the adjustments from there. Anything that we need to do, bringing up sound, bringing it down, making the tones different, whatever, taking sounds out, whatever, and then from there, what we do is I just make sure that the editing process is taken care of. Any unwanted ums or breaths or anything, that's all out too. And then I publish. It's actually relatively easy from the way that we've created our system. Everything that we do, every sound, all the intros, everything that takes place on our show is done in recording.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, do you record in stereo, 2-track, left and right, or do you record multi-track?
We record in stereo, left and right.
So both your voices are going to stereo. All right, cool. So you guys, I feel I'm going to be spoiled by you guys actually playing by the rules of the speed round. I have a feeling some people are just going to go and go and go. Third part of the speed round is your hardware setup. I want to know, what's your hardware setup? Where are you sitting? What mics are in your face? And do you have a mixer? And what are you recording on? That kind of thing.
So I built a custom studio in our basement, and it's.
It used to be like someone's laundry room back when people actually cared about folding laundry. And we were like, hell no, we're gonna make that our recording studio.
So I'm the kind of guy that, like, when I do something, I want to do it, and I want to do it, full tilt. So I went out and we bought brand new computers, bought Heil mics and mic stands, and I have a mixer here. An Alesis mixer, or Alesis, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It has 8 channels. I have my iPad here for all my sounds. Like, what we like to include, like, little sound bites in our podcast. So I have a dedicated soundboard just for sounds, and that's about it. Everything it's all tapped together, and everything goes into the one main computer and out to the ether.
There you go. That's so cool. So wow, I have a lot of questions. And by the way, Alesis is what I've always heard. Just
okay,
for
good.
that.
There. Now I don't feel as bad.
Although it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys feel is your greatest strength in terms of production and engineering? And let me ask you, Mary, are you involved in the actual any technical parts of this?
That's a great question. So I used to be on television. I have this really interesting Renaissance women life where I've been a musician. I was a music teacher. I actually landed a gig on TV. So when you were saying, wow, you really stick to that time frame, I'm used to that because on TV it's like down to the second. So I kind of feel, we have about 30 seconds left. Being a musician, I feel like I have an ear, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I was back in the nerd days of early podcasts when nobody even knew what that word meant. And I used to listen to some great podcasts and some not so great podcasts, but the quality was awesome. So that's why you stuck with it. And when Blake and I decided to take on this venture, we both knew that we wanted it to be a quality sounding podcast, because since there are so many more podcasts available, people aren't just going to stick around if you have good quality. It needs to be a good quality and a good quality sound. So when it comes to the engineering bits, as Blake said, we have our own studio. So when it came in the beginning, we would sit down, we would listen to different things, and we would try to see what tones and how we wanted the mixer to sound. I mean, we actually have no bloody idea what all those dials mean, but we were like, this one sounds good. Oh, turn that one down. Turn the second one down. How about that red one? So we don't really know what we're doing, but between my ear and also kind of my background on television and just listening to podcasts, I was able to put that into the experience. And now that the setup is done, Blake takes over when it becomes the production time.
Well, because when we first started, we were doing this in our little apartment that we had, and our studio was our dining room table, and we had to get the computers, get it on the dining room table, get the mixer out, get the microphones out, and then do all the stuff, get all the wiring out, put it all together. And then when people came over, we had to take it all apart again. And then we got lazy, and we decided, screw it, we're just going to leave it all together. So we couldn't have dinner on our dining room table anymore.
Oh, that's classic.
I know, right? So then when we bought our house recently, I said we're gonna do a full studio, so everything is plug and play. So Mary is the one who kind of like guides the eventual sound. She tells me, "Hey, this sounds good," or "Can we make it sound like this?" And then I'm the nerd again that makes it all happen.
And we try to focus that I do more of the hosting when it comes to tying things up and keeping us on track with time. I'm the one who's reading the screen flow. We have a shared Google Doc, since it is kind of like a two-person host for each of our shows. So I'm really more in the live, and then I like to go to bed early. So once it's done, I hand it on over to Blake.
We fancy ourselves as kind of like a sports broadcast almost. Like Mary is the host, and I'm the color guy.
Right.
And if you have those two roles within this show, then it flows perfectly.
I like that. I mean, Mary, what you said, you have a professional standard because of your background in TV, you said, right?
Yes, in music and television, correct.
Music and television, yeah. So you have like a professional standard, and you also have an ear. You kind of, you listen and you hear things. I think, when it comes to audio quality, the ear is where it all starts. And if you can sort of have some discrimination with your ears and know what you're hearing and what you're not hearing, that's where it all starts. I know, like I said earlier, maybe even off the air to you guys, that a lot of most podcasters do not have any audio engineering background, so they haven't tuned their ears. They haven't trained their ears to hear certain things. So the fact that you're performing that function for your shows and for your production, that's huge. I mean, that is indispensable. And one thing is monitoring. I want to get into monitoring, but I want to get back to what you said when you first started, that you had to construct a studio on your dining room table every time. Did you guys have any formal audio training or any experience with any audio before you decided to podcast?
Not really.
No.
Really?
We decided to start podcasting because we had a son who has colic, so we could never leave the house. And one day when we did get a date, we went to Guitar Center and we said, we should start a podcast. Hi, Guitar Center man, which mixer should we buy? We want a podcast in our dining room. So we maybe had like 3 minutes with this guy who had a great ponytail, and he was like, you plug this in with the USB, you're going to be all set. And that was kind of our audio training.
Wow. All right. So which aspect of the production was the most difficult for you guys to learn? Blake, maybe technically, what was the most difficult for you to learn and kind of get a handle on?
Oh, geez, I would definitely say the EQ and all the levels, and making sure that you didn't spike or you didn't clip, and how do you do that, and making sure that you have the bright tones in your voice, but you also want the warm bass in your voice as well. And how do you adjust that? Because every move you make in the EQ, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction in the EQ.
Right.
So it just makes your life miserable.
Oh, jeez.
It makes it like it sucks the soul right out of your body when you're trying to get it right. So ultimately, what I ended up doing is Mary is not being facetious when she says we stuck with a guy for 3 minutes that had a cute ponytail. Like, that really happened. But what ended up happening was that our studio and all the things, all the wires, we all upgraded over time, and then our software, we upgraded that as well over time. And what I ended up doing was I decided I'm just going to take one of the presets that I like best in my software and just go with that. And we both conferred on which preset sounded best. And then that was what we decided to do. So I couldn't take the EQ anymore. I couldn't do it. If my advice is find a preset you like and roll with it.
Right. Well, if it's always your voice and it's your voice speaking through the same microphone and the same, mic preamp and the same mixer and everything, then the EQ should be the same every time. Actually,
Right.
I'm sure you guys know one thing that'll change that a lot is your microphone technique, where you're speaking into the microphone. Are you always
Sure.
the same distance from the mic, speaking from the same angle? I mean, those two things will change the sound drastically. And that, for me, that's one of the most difficult things when I'm producing engineering shows, is that people don't stay the same distance from the mic, and they're also, turning their head and speaking in different directions, and it really does change the EQ a lot. So, in the end, you just got to do the best you can. You got to get it into a balance, like you said, the bright tones, but the warm bass as well. You kind of get a nice balance, and then you just go with it. I mean, if this was, if we were engineering a Led Zeppelin album, we might spend a little more time on EQing vocals, but podcasting is just about getting it right. And
Yeah, luckily it's pretty straightforward with podcasts, and like you said, we're not producing Led Zeppelin 1 or Dark Side of the Moon over here. What we're doing is we're just speaking into the mic, we're speaking to each other, and like you said, we could be speaking out here, or we could be speaking way too close to the mic.
right.
So you just have to stay as close as you can without swallowing the damn thing.
Right.
And if you do that, then you've done the right thing, and then the production should be relatively easy.
Right, and if you're listening to this and you're a novice at production and engineering, one of the things I always forget to mention is that the reason we spend so much time trying to make it sound good is because we want our listener to have a good experience, right? There's nothing more annoying when you're listening to a podcast and where one speaker's voice is really loud and the other one is really soft, and you have to keep adjusting your volume. It happened to me. I was driving across Utah going 85 miles an hour, and I was listening to podcasts, and some of them sounded fine. Other ones, literally, the levels of voices were so different that after about a minute, I said, I can't listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there really is a need to get it right and to make the experience good for the listener. That's what the production's all about, right?
Right. Well, the first thing that I would say, if anybody is listening to this and either they're starting a podcast or they've just started one and they really don't know what they're doing, which is totally okay, because obviously, like we said, Mary and I had no idea what the hell we were doing.
Right.
But the most important thing that I can stress to the person that's listening right now is just find the right level. Don't worry about the EQ quite yet. Don't worry about, my voice sounds really bassy. I'm not getting enough brightness. Just make sure that you're not clipping or you're not too low. And anybody that's speaking with you is not the same level as you. And as long as you do that, it doesn't matter how low or high you are. We can adjust, the listener can adjust the volume in the car as long as that they're equal.
Right.
And then from there, then you can start building and getting a little bit more complicated and filters and all that other stuff.
Totally. So let's talk about microphones. What kind of microphones? By the way, is the microphone one of those things that you upgraded over time?
Yes, yeah. We started off with the Audio Technicas, like the $50 ones, and then we moved up to the Heils. Now I think.
Oh, the PR40.
Yeah, the PR40.
Got
Those,
it.
those are they're pretty good mics. We like them, and we have like the sound shields and all that other stuff.
So you didn't have any audio training, but where did you hear about the Heils from? So I'm supposing that somewhere online you heard about that.
Yeah, actually, I'm a huge listener of Cliff Ravenscraft.
Oh, okay.
And the podcast Answer Man. I've been listening to him for a long time now, and then I got the idea from him to upgrade all the stuff, and I know that he uses Heil and everything. And then I started doing my own research, and then I just decided on that one because it sounded like the best option for me at the price range that I was looking for.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a good mic. I haven't used one. There's a lot of mics I haven't used, but I really want to try these microphones. And my wife keeps telling me, look, you're starting the podcast engineering school and you're starting the podcast engineering show. Maybe you can get, some of these equipment manufacturers can sponsor you and just give you equipment to try and to test and everything. And I was like, I would love that, but I don't know how to approach anybody, or I don't know how to do that. Anyway, I guess I
got to ask. I mean, it literally, that's all you have to do is just literally find a representative and ask. That's it.
Right? So when you were set up on the dining room table, you had the Audio Technica mics, about $50 mics. Was it an echoey room? How was the sound in that room?
Yeah, it was the dining room, so we didn't have any padding, we didn't have any any like sound dampeners. We didn't have anything. We just had like the little filter that goes on top of the mic, and that was it. I mean, it wasn't terrible.
It was totally terrible. They didn't even have. We didn't even have stands. Like the Audio Technica come with these little like micro tripods.
Yeah, we had to hold them.
we either would hold them or then we called it a diva box. That's what we did. We had these like cardboard boxes, like Amazon boxes that we would stack up on the table so that they were actually chin level, so we didn't have to hold this microphone the whole time. And we'd joke, bring me my diva box so I don't have to hold my microphone.
I literally forgot about the diva box.
How
that
could
is
you
so
forget?
funny.
And I told him, I was like, we just need to buy normal person stands.
And that's
like,
exactly why I went out and I bought the arm stands.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Specifically.
I don't know why they make those little desktop mic stands that are like 2 inches tall. Like,
seriously?
who hunches over for the whole show to talk into a mic? It's crazy.
And I'm 6'4", right?
Oh.
So I'm a pretty tall guy. Like, I can't hunch down that far.
Right?
Yep.
So you had a mixer. Did you have a mixer right off the bat as well? Your initial setup?
No, the initial setup when we first started, I'd say within the first few months or so, we recorded directly into the computer, with the USB mics, the Audio Technicas.
Oh, okay.
And then
Wait! You had 2 USB mics plugged into the same computer?
Yes.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Just plugged them directly in, and then GarageBand detected both. We recorded two tracks.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So she was on track 1, and I was on track 2.
See, I don't use GarageBand, and I know I use a lot of PCs, Windows, and you can't plug in 2 USB mics. You just can't.
Join the dark side, my friend. That's all I can say is join the dark side of Apple.
See. All right. So you had the USB mics, and you're going in there, and then when you upgraded to a mixer, what was that like? I mean, did you study the manual, or how did you learn how to use a mixer?
Well, first, we wanted to get a mixer because we actually envisioned that more people were going to be joining us in person for when we had roundtable discussions or for interviews. So we were like, we totally need more inputs.
We did. We did need more inputs because people did join us.
A couple. Since we've moved, we're like, stay away. Once again, I'm having wine and I don't have a bra on. Leave me alone. I still have a shirt on, Chris. Don't worry. I'm just relaxing.
You know what? We need to mention that up front.
Yes, sorry. This is not a topless show.
Okay, all right.
No, I'm just in my pajamas. But we have actually been able to use the mixer quite a lot.
That's right. And since then, actually, since people have not been joining us in our studio anymore, we've actually started using the inputs on the mixer for a whole different range of things. Like Mary's computer is directly into our mixer. My computer is directly into our mixer. My iPad is directly into our mixer. And then we have some other things that go directly in the mixer too, so that again, whenever we play a sound, whenever we need anything from whatever we're doing, it's all done in recording. Nothing is done in post. It just saves so much time.
And how did we've talked about the level of voices, like one voice should not be way louder than the other, but the sound clips and the music you play, how did you level those out? Was it just trial and error, just record it and listen back and hear it and then adjust everything, all these different devices?
Yeah, so the sound clips are recorded pretty much at the same level, or either they're sound clips that we've taken from the internet, or they're sound clips that we've taken from a music piece, or something stupid that like a sound bite from a movie or whatever that we play.
Right.
Like every time Mary mentions Harry Potter, I always play a little sound clip that says, "You're a wizard, Harry," just because we're nerds, right? So we got that from the movie.
You mean like this lightsaber?
Yes!
Yes!
You made my life. Thank you. That was amazing. So what we do is, what I did was I just take those and I find the right level in the computer. I reinsert it into my iPad, and then from there, all the levels in my mixer are at the same level that I need them to be,
right.
And then it comes out even.
Right. So yeah, that's it should be said again for those of you listening who are just getting into this kind of thing. When you have a mixer and you have a lot of different things going through the mixer, obviously your mixer mixes everything together, and it comes out in stereo, left and right, and you guys are recording it in GarageBand in left and right. What happens is it mixes everything together, so once you record it in GarageBand, you can't go back. You can adjust certain things, but if someone's talking over music, you can't adjust the voice and the music separately because they're already mixed together. So that's why you got to get it right while you're recording. And that means you got to make sure your levels are good beforehand. Maybe practice, maybe, set the levels, trial and error, and then get it right. And then, of course, once you get better at it, you'll be able to hear things too. Like if someone came to your house and said, "Ooh, I have a computer with a bunch of sound clips. Can I plug into your mixer?" You could say, "Yeah." And they plug in and they might play a sound clip, and you'll hear it and you'll be like, "Oh my God, that's way too loud," or "Oh my God, that's too soft," right?
Right, and the funny thing is a lot of mixers now come with the little lights that will light up whenever a sound is played. So if the little lights that are playing or that are lighting up when the sound is playing, if you're getting in the red, you're way too loud.
Right.
But if you're getting in the yellow and you're right there, then you're fine. For example, like my mic is set on plus 7 dB. But Mary's mic right now is set on plus 9 dB, and that's because my voice is louder than hers. So I need to compensate for that. So she has a louder mic and I have a softer mic.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about recording, like a typical podcast session, a typical recording session. Okay, you have all your equipment, you're getting ready to go, and how do you guys, get ready? You'd be like, quiet on the set. Do you, lock up the dog, or how do you prepare?
We try to put the kids to sleep and pray that they don't wake up. Actually, Blake left out a very important piece of equipment, which is right next to my computer, which is our baby monitor. I have a dual screen baby monitor, and that also has blinking lights to let me know if either of the children wake up. But I stare at it constantly to make sure nobody's running amok. So we first put the kids down.
Well, wait, when you're recording a session, if you hear your baby crying, do you ever, like in audio engineering mode, do you ever try to turn down your baby's voice? That's a little loud in the mix. I'm going to turn that down a little.
Our children have made quite a few appearances on the show just because it's happened at awesome moments, and we're like, oh, whatever. All of our listeners know that we're parents, so actually a lot of them find it quite endearing.
Actually, they do. Yeah, they request their appearance every once in a while. It's actually really funny.
So we try to put the babies to sleep, and then we also have cats, and generally we lock them upstairs as well. As Blake said, our studio is in the basement, so we try to remember to put the cats upstairs. Sometimes we forget, and then you can hear them because they'll jump up. They want to see us. So then we quickly throw them away and throw them upstairs. But then Blake and I sit down. We generally both each have some kind of like water because your mouths get a little parched sometimes when you're chatting for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I open up GarageBand. Blake is double checking. He frequently will write the show outline in a Google Doc. So I'll be opening that, just looking it over. And then I hit record, and Blake hits the sound button, and we're good to go.
Right? Yeah, the intro music starts. So you said you record into GarageBand in stereo at the highest resolution available. What is that resolution?
256.
Okay, so it's MP3 quality, but
yes.
256, which is about twice the standard resolution of an MP3, but in terms of like an uncompressed WAV file, it's probably about a quarter.
Right, so like we could record into WAV, but I don't know. I just don't. I probably should, but what do you think? Do you think I should be recording into WAV, or is 256 for the MP3? Is that fair?
No, WAV's the way to go, and here's the reason. Because when you bring it into, you said you bring it into Adobe Audition.
Correct.
Yeah. When you bring it into Adobe Audition, when you apply any EQ or compression or any effects, the higher the resolution of the source material, the audio, the better that effect will sound. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I always think of audio resolution as like a picture resolution. Like you've all seen websites where there's a picture that's all pixelated and it looks nasty, right? Because it's a low resolution photo that they tried to blow up bigger, and it just looks like pixels. It looks blurry. It looks horrible. Same thing when you record, and again, it's not as drastic in audio, but when you record in MP3 quality and then you go apply a bunch of effects, it doesn't sound nearly as good as it could. So I would always suggest, I would say record in the highest resolution possible, but for me, the highest resolution is 24-bit 96K wave file. I don't do 96K. I do 24-bit because there's a big difference between 24-bit and 16-bit in terms of depth. But I only do it at 48K instead of 96 because 96 for podcasting is a little overkill. 96 for music you need that. So yeah, definitely wave file is the way to go.
I'm not sure if GarageBand offers wave. Does it offer wave?
I actually don't know. I've never used GarageBand. And look, and GarageBand is one of those programs where it's almost like a consumer type of product instead of a professional type product. So, and that doesn't mean it's bad, and that doesn't mean you can't use it. I mean, look, your sound is great. That's why I had invited you on this show, and you're recording at 256 MP3 quality. So it's not the end of the world. It's just, it's almost like if you have the option, you would just record in wave. Just because,
I think the funny thing is like because Adobe does offer wave, to my knowledge, to record into that.
Oh, definitely,
into wave, but. Adobe for Mary, because Mary's the one that hits the record button and she operates the program as we're recording. So she's used to GarageBand, so that's what we use. We could use Adobe to record into it. It would take a whole step out of the process, but since it's easier for us to manage, we go with that route.
Right.
And it just makes sense for us, But with that said, 256 is okay. I think it's whatever.
But if I had to learn how to push a new button, I could do it. I could do it.
Somebody told me that GarageBand is like the Disney version of audio recording.
I love Disney.
And it makes and that's why we use it, my love.
Yes.
But it makes sense. Like it's like you're right, it's a consumer thing. It's like pretty, it's easy to use.
Right.
It's very accessible, so that's why we use it.
Right. And again, if you use it properly, it can be done really well. It can sound really good. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be stressing with Podcast Engineering School is that you don't have to spend $1 zillion to sound good. All you have to do is operate the equipment properly, because the mistakes that are made are in the levels and the gain staging. Like someone will have their fader all the way down, but yet they'll be cranking their mic pre all the way up. So they're introducing noise that shouldn't be there. That doesn't have to be there. So anyway, I could talk. I'm going to teach a whole course on gain staging, how to, the levels, how it goes from your mic to the mic pre, through the mixer, through the EQ, all that, through the fader, out of the mixer, into the recorder. There's level settings on almost every part of that signal chain. So, and if you get those, and if you stage it properly, you keep the level at the optimum level all the way, you can record into GarageBand and it'll sound really good. So, of course, we always want to use the best tools and at the highest resolution, but I think good practices of audio engineering trump that stuff for sure. Like, I would rather use GarageBand, but use a nice mixer and have all my levels perfect than use something much better, or let's say Adobe Audition, and then all my levels are messed up and there's a bunch of noise on there. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and it makes your life a lot easier when your levels are all done, because then you can just go ahead and make little tweaks, as opposed to bringing this all the way up or taking it all the way down. It makes it so much easier.
Totally. So now I want to talk about your philosophy on editing. All right, editing is this process where, okay, we recorded it. Now let's chop it up like crazy, or take out all the ahs and ums and ands, or, I did a 30-minute interview, but I only like 10 minutes of it. I got to chop it down. What is your philosophy on editing?
It's a case-by-case basis, in my opinion. We've done interviews where the person, we would ask a question or we would engage them in the conversation, and they would go off on a 15-minute tangent on something completely unrelated to the question or the conversation that we're having. Right. So we got to fix that, right?
Yeah.
Because then we're going to lose our audience, and nobody wants to listen to a sucky interview, right?
That's right.
So
I just decided on this show, if anyone does that, starts talking for too long, I'm just going to play this. I'm going to play a 1K tone. I'm just going to let it keep going until they stop talking. All right, sorry about that.
That would have them stop.
All right, so case-by-case basis, and if they go too long, sometimes you got to chop it down.
But the way that I'd say it is, a lot of people go absolutely nuts. And this is another thing that sucks the soul right out of your life, which is over-editing. Everybody wants to over-edit, every breath or every or and one of the things that I tell podcasting friends or people that are interested in podcasting or whatever, there is a natural flow to conversation. You speak, like right now, you ask me a question, you're speaking, there's a slight pause, I think about it, then I start talking and I take a quick breath, and then we continue the conversation. If you edit that slight pause so that it's just an immediate answer, or if there's an immediate word, then it doesn't sound natural, and people can hear that. And people can hear when you edit in mid-breath, like a
yes,
and then you know what I mean? And that's like, it takes me right out of the recording. So you have to, again, it's case by case, but for the most part, try to leave those things in. Now, Mary and I have been doing this so long now, where we have a natural shorthand in our natural intonation and our conversation flow. It's become much easier to edit. So when we're talking with other people, it takes a little bit more time. But for us, we pretty much hit the record button and we go. And unless we stop for our kids, or unless they're like our cats does something stupid, then it stays on and it makes it into the show because it feels natural. Totally.
I agree with what you just said 100%. There's nothing worse than editing so it sounds unnatural. And, we know that when people are talking naturally, people hear it naturally. But when you cut it up and make those spaces weird or too short, it just doesn't sound natural. And these days, I mean, we know, I'm pretty sure studies have shown that, people want naturalness. They want the real thing. They want transparency. They don't want everything to be perfect. I mean, the guy who reads the news in this news voice and reads it perfectly, like, we tune that stuff out. So it's these little inconsistencies in our deliveries that actually pull people in. I mean, I used to, I edit out some lip smacks. I don't like lip smacks, So, some people lip smack like crazy, and it's okay. It's natural, fine. But to me, I take out a lot of them. A lot of times, if there's a pause that's a little too long, I will tighten it up just to tighten it up. But, I'm obviously listening for the naturalness of it. I won't cut it too short. And the other thing is, sometimes people do trip on their words, like if they're, I'll do it right now. Like if I'm trying to say the right thing, but I don't, and then, so you saw how I said the word trying like 5 times? I will cut out maybe 2 of them or 3. So I won't remove the whole stutter. Instead of 5 stutters, it'll only be 2 or 3. That's better. You know what I'm saying? You ever do stuff like that?
Oh, all the time, yeah. And especially with guests when either, they've never been on a podcast before, or somebody is trying to just get something out, and for whatever reason their brain is working faster than their mouth. You can't help it. I mean, I do that all the time, and it happens. I think one of the other cool keys too is to record like dead air. And whatever the sounds are in your studio, record the dead air. And then if you're having a guest, have them not speak for like 3 seconds or 4 seconds. And then that way, if there is like this awkward pause, or if they mess up a word, you can put that dead air in so it doesn't sound like completely blank. And it helps ease transitions from like a word that they messed up, but you had to kind of keep it, but you had to cut some of it out.
Yeah.
So it helps the transitions.
That's a great tip. I definitely do that. Like, you need, like, if you have to make an edit, but then it ends up unnatural and too short, I grab a little blank space and just put it in there, and it works. That's a great tip, Blake. Let me ask you this: when you have a guest on, what are some of the challenges you have with guests with their audio quality? especially. Yeah, baby. Here we go.
Oh, God. Well, the problem is a lot of our guests are really hard to come by. As I said, we interview people who are on television sets. I mean, we might be catching them and they might be about to shoot something in a couple of hours. So maybe they're in their trailer or they might be in the writer's room and they have a half hour to themselves. So quite frequently it is done on Skype via someone's iPhone headphones with the little microphone, and which even that can be okay if they're in the right environment, if their signal strength is really, really strong, and if nobody else is around them. But it's hard. So one of the things I wish we could be in a situation where we could send all of the people we interview a microphone, or we could be very nitpicky and say, these are the conditions, this is the time, this is the kind of place, this is the environment you need to be in, you need to have this kind of a microphone, and yet we can't. I mean, the people that we go after, it is like we are so lucky that they're calling us on their phone, straight from their phone,
Right.
when they're in their limo heading to, I remember we interviewed Bear McCreary, the composer, and he was heading to a recording session. Like he was in the car, and it was a noisy phone call. It was such a noisy phone call just because he's in the car and he's going, and he's like, someone else was talking for a second, but we needed it so much. And that's where I thought, okay, the quality's going to be okay. And our listeners know that when it's just a podcast between Blake and I, they get great quality audio. But when it's a guest, sometimes we have to say before the interview starts, just so you guys know, like, this interview was done on location. We try to give that caveat because sometimes you just can't make up for it.
Yeah, like
and
that.
that's a really tough time for us.
Like one time we had an interview with Mike Barker, who was a director, and he was in the middle of this like great room full of hardwood. And he was doing the interview on his iPhone on speaker. And like it was a disaster. And not only that, he was in Scotland. So what they would be doing is they would be sending these huge data dumps from Scotland all the way to New York at Starz Production. So in the middle of our conversation, the bandwidth would drop like instantly, and the conversation would cut completely out, or you get like like that.
Yeah.
Oh my! That talk about editing nightmare. That
yet,
was a disaster.
And yet here it is, where once again he's in Scotland.
Yeah,
even
you
if we
can't blame
wanted to, beg for a different thing, and with some of these people, you can't be nitpicky. With our parenting podcast, when we're interviewing different parenting experts, we're able to give a little bit more guidance, where we do say we'd like you to be in a smaller room. It's better if there's some different kind of padding. You don't want to be somewhere that it could be really noisy. Ideally, could you try to see if you have a friend who has a type of microphone? If not, here are some suggestions that we have. So we're a little bit pickier when we can be, but we've had a lot of difficulties. I think that is one of the biggest things that we personally struggle with, and we don't know how to fix, is our interview audio quality.
Yeah, because you can play with the quality on their end, in the post up to a certain point. You can make it clearer, you can make it louder, softer, or you could take out some of the humming noise from the phone. But it's not going to be obviously studio quality that you and I are speaking about right now.
Yeah, and once it's all mixed to 2-track, there's only so much you can do. Now, how do you take phone calls? What device do you use?
So we use Skype actually, and the Skype we bought a number through Skype. I think it's like, I don't know, it's like $5 a year, whatever it is. And we're able to make phone calls out through Skype and take them in from outside phones via Skype. And then we connect it to the computer, which goes to the mixer.
Right. So the computer that's making the Skype call, the output of that computer goes into your mixer. Are you recording in GarageBand on another computer?
No, we're recording. We are recording. We're being a little redundant in that we're recording on Call Recorder with Skype,
right?
And then we're also recording in GarageBand at the same time,
but not on the same computer.
No, on the same computer.
Oh, really?
On the same computer. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Right, because all the sound that comes into the computer is going out to the mixer. Yeah, it's going out to the mixer and then coming back in, I think, into the computer. So either way, what's happening is, that's right.
That's how it is.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, so it goes back into the computer, and it's on the same computer. Yes.
Right, which is so this must be another Apple thing where you can sort of set the input of these different programs. I mean, you have your call recorder recording your Skype call on this is all happening on one computer. Your call recorder is recording the Skype call, and at the same time, GarageBand is recording the stereo mix.
Correct. So, yeah, GarageBand is recording the call as well, because the sound from the call is getting into the computer and back into the mixer and going back to the computer again. So, yes, it's recording the call, it's recording us. The sound recorder is recording the call and recording us. Yeah, it's all happening all at once.
Okay. Do you use, and you don't have any compressors that you use during recording, like hooked up to your mixer?
No, that's all done post.
Okay, yeah, so I'm not going to do it now, but I will have to. In fact, maybe I should make a whole episode describing my whole setup, because I have I have a lot of stuff set up, let's put it that way. And I have a lot of control. And
well, you're a sound engineer. That's what you should.
Exactly. I mean, if I didn't have a nice setup, I mean, what good am I? So anyway, I'll have to go over my setup. But, on my setup, I have a mixer, which everything goes through, but I also have compressors on each channel, because sometimes someone on Skype or on a call, sometimes it'll be really loud, and then sometimes they'll talk really soft, and the compressor helps to, get that right. And then I actually record multi-track. I don't record stereo. I can actually record up to 8 voices, 8 people talking or music at the same time on different tracks. So for me, later on, I can go back and edit one track, edit maybe that guy who's on the call from Scotland. I can mess with his track by itself and then mix it like a song, like Led Zeppelin 1, mix it with all the other stuff, and I can adjust everything later. So that's like, obviously a much bigger
Well, the funny thing is with like call recorder is you could take the file, like the movie file, and then you can split it into 2 MP3s. And then it'll take my end with Mary and I, and it will separate it from the call end.
Oh, okay.
So if I wanted to just play with that particular track, if I wanted to play with the guy from Scotland, that track, I can edit anything I want on his end.
Got it.
And I can edit anything I want on my end.
Perfect.
So I can do that. It's a smaller step. We could have gotten like the mixer that had the multi-track as well.
Yeah,
but it was like way more money, so we just decided to go with the single track.
Yeah, and like I said, if you do the levels right and you do it right, it can sound great, and so that's good. So when now you have it in Adobe Audition and you do some editing, and when it comes time to EQ it and compress it and stuff, what kind of plugins do you use, or how do you process the sound within Adobe Audition?
Well, what I do is I get it so that it can only go up to a certain level, the hard limit. So it can only go up to minus 0.1 dB or whatever it is.
Right.
And then it can only go. It can be that loud, but it can never be softer than minus 3 or whatever it is. So that will take care of that automatically. It'll make that sound whatever is high pitched. It'll bring it to 0.1.
Right.
But if it's low and it's really soft, it'll bring it up to whatever level that I want it to be at. So that will happen there. And then, again, what I said was, like I said, I found a preset that I really, really like on Adobe Audition. So for the compressor, I did a multi-track compressor.
Multi-band compressor.
Multi-band. Yes, I apologize. Multi-band, and I chose in Adobe. I chose the broadcast, the broadcast preset.
Yeah,
and I made some adjustments here and there. Like I did, plus dB here or minus dB there, just to Mary's taste, but nothing too crazy. And that is the preset that we use, and I even use the broadcast for our phone interviews as well. But normally what I'll do is I'll probably up their dBs like +4 or +5 to get a good fuller sound, as much as you can from like a phone or a cell phone.
Right.
And then that'll make it easier.
And you said when you said that you adjusted to Mary's taste, I pictured you adjusting some controls. I pictured her sitting on a couch in her pajamas, like wearing headphones, like either just smiling or giving you nasty looks or giving you thumbs up and thumbs down as you adjust the audio.
That's exactly what happens. That is you just like you step foot into our studio.
Or maybe she might even have like a little whip, and if you do something, if it doesn't sound good,
it's like the Indiana Jones whip, boom,
she's gonna whack you.
So, one of the things too that I've learned is when you're editing and you're doing the EQ and you're doing all that stuff, it's great to have your really expensive earphones or your really expensive headphones that you listen to, and I'm actually listening to you on right now.
Right.
But when you're editing, I try to use the earbuds that I get from Apple because your listeners, for the most part, are not listening to you on your Sennheiser, whatever, or your Sonys or whatever. They're not listening on that for the most part. They're listening with the earbuds that they get from Apple.
Right.
So it's okay to do it the way that some people do it, but if you want to get the true sound of what most of your listeners are hearing, edit with earbuds.
Yeah.
Because that way the sound that you want will come through those earbuds.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of audio engineering, the best thing is to listen on good monitors, which are like studio monitors, like the ones I have are the Yamaha NS10s. They're classic, recording studio, monitors, speakers, and the sound on them is very flat, meaning what you hear is what is there, kind of thing. And the beauty of the Yamaha NS10s is that if you mix, because they're kind of mid-rangey, if you mix it there and it sounds good, it'll sound good anywhere. The other, but not every podcaster is going to go out and get, Yamaha NS10s and an amplifier and all that and have like a little mix station set up like I do. But another good point is to listen on different speakers, and this is more like when you're working on getting a good sound that I'm talking about, like, figuring out what EQ sounds good and all that. You can listen on different speakers. If you have earbuds, listen them. Then put on your good headphones. Then maybe burn it onto, or in the old days, burn it onto a CD and bring it in your car. But or somehow Bluetooth it in your car, like listen through your car speakers. When you're getting your sound, listening in different ways is great for that. But in your case, for instance, you already have a good sound, so now you don't need to go run around and listen on 4 sets of speakers. You can listen on your whichever ones you want, really.
Right. Yeah. And you are 100% right about the different kinds of speakers, because I hear a certain tone or a pitch or something, the way that I sound on my headphones. But when I go into my Dodge Durango, my sound and my voice and Mary's voice is completely, I can't say completely, but it's noticeably different.
Yeah.
And it's surprising. When you first hear it, you think like, oh, well, you put everything in and all the levels are normal and you sound one way and that's that. No, it's wrong. It's completely wrong. You sound completely different on different speakers.
Right. Yeah. So is there anything in your entire workflow that you'd really like to, get better at or get quicker at?
Geez, everything. Really. Everything. It's a never-ending process. Like I told you, I listened to Podcast Answer Man, and I listen to that because you get great tips.
Totally,
you get great ideas, and Cliff is just a smart guy, and that's how I ended up getting the idea for my soundboard with my iPad. I use iJingle. So before, when we first started, like I tried to form our rapport like they have it on sports radio. Like up here in Providence and in Boston, sports radio is kind of like a big deal. And it's on FM stations and everybody listens. It's the highest rated radio stations in all of Boston. They have like sound clips and stupid little things that happen. So I wanted that same feel. Like I wanted to be able to have people listen to us, hear us, and whenever something happens often, I want a familiar sound to go along with that. So I would sit down, I would find the sound, and originally I would break up the recording. I'd insert the sound, check it out, move it little bits here and there, and then go with it.
Right.
And then I found out a way to get everything done in recording, so that whenever a sound plays, it's done through the mixer, and then it's on the track,
right.
No matter what. There it is. And that made my life so much easier. Intro music, outro music, all of that stuff. even when we do the intros themselves, like when Mary says, "Welcome to OutlanderCast, a podcast dedicated to Outlander on the network Stars," that is all pre-recorded. She doesn't say anything in live in real time.
Right.
That's all pre-recorded. And then when we first start talking, it's, "Hey, welcome everybody, yada yada. Welcome to the show," and then we get into our show. So that also saves a ton of time. But what can I get better at? I would say show notes and marking down where I do want to find edits, like notes within the recording. That would be a lot better.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what I do is every time I'm recording, I always have a little piece of paper here, like a little note card actually, and I have my digital recorder, my backup digital recorder, right in front of me with a digital display of the minutes and the seconds. And for instance, there's quite a few times during this episode where I sort of paused for a second because I wanted to, read a note that I had and whatever. I quickly wrote down the number on the digital recorder so I can go back. When I go back to edit later, I know I have to tighten up that spot. And that saves a lot of time. And I agree with what you said totally about recording each episode as if it's live, because what is it, the saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. An ounce of doing it right, recording it properly, is worth a pound of editing time, because if you just do it right and get it done right, then it saves a lot of time.
Oh my God, when we first started, I would spend hours editing. I mean, like we would finish an episode, let's say 8:00. And I would be up until 11:30, maybe 12 editing, because I wanted this sound here and I wanted that to be missing or that breath to be gone.
Right.
And I just realized, dude, man, ain't nobody got time for that.
That's rough. Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you can do that for a while, but you can't sustain that. It's too much.
And instead, we just had to learn how to stop saying "us"
Yeah.
and "ahs."
Oh, gee, there's an idea. Oh, my God.
And that's something that Mary has really worked with me on, and learning together about how we talk together, learning when we figure we're going to finish a sentence or when to continue on a thought, but I need to stop talking.
Right.
And then she needs to continue that thought in a way. So that's how that works.
So we're getting near the end here, and it's funny because, again, this is the first. I don't know if did I mention this is the first episode of this show? I did, right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. See, I wasn't going to mention that, but then at last minute I decided I was. But anyway, on my agenda, I have, for the last thing that I asked the guest, is to ask you to reveal one of your really good secret tricks. But then I just kind of realized that we've spent the whole time talking about cool little tricks that you learned and all that. So if you can think of any little secret trick you learned, we'd love to hear it. But again, if not, that's okay.
I'd say just to listen to yourself. And as painful as it is and as boring as it may become, to completely just say, all right, I'm just going to listen to myself and pretend it's not me, and listen to that recording and say, all right, I do hear that dog. I am going to have to figure out a way to soundproof that. Or, wow, I really say that phrase a lot of times. Or I lip smack a lot of times. So one of my tips would be just listen to yourself, take notes on yourself, and always know that there's room for improvement. And it doesn't mean that you're bad. Like, start recording tomorrow if you can, because that's the best thing, is to start recording and start finding out ways to even get better.
And I actually, here's not a trick, but a piece of advice that I would give, which is, when we first started podcasting, we really, like we said, we had no idea what we were doing. And I remember hearing a piece of advice, I forget who it was from, might have been Podcast Answer Man, where he said, if you go back to your first 10 episodes and you are not embarrassed by them, you've done something wrong.
Right.
It's okay to be embarrassed by, like, if you listen to our first few episodes of ParentCast, it was a disaster. It was so bad. Like, the levels were off, and we were clipping left and right. Ooh. And what? It's because we didn't know. And it's all trial and error. And don't get bogged down by the details of of absolute perfect sound in the immediacy. Just start recording, and then when you hear it, then you'll learn the tricks, and that's why you go to the podcast engineering school, so you can get better at doing what you need to do.
Yeah, and both of your tips were about hosting a show and are brilliant, and the same advice goes for if you're engineering a show or producing a show, is what you said, Mary. Listen and be honest, and listen critically. And what you said, Blake, about going back to your first work, and if your current work sounds like the first few episodes you engineered or produced, there's a problem. That means you haven't grown. So I forgot to tell you guys, Barry, the maintenance guy, is here with me. And Barry, did you enjoy this episode with Mary and Blake Larsen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He liked it. Do you think we should end the show right now?
No way.
Yeah. All right. He doesn't want to end the show, but
I'm down with you, brother. Let's keep going.
That's Barry. So listen, this has been awesome. I mean, I can't believe it's been an hour, but I could talk about this stuff all day long, every day. So Mary and Blake Larsen, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, our absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, and quickly again, tell me your 3 shows again.
ParentCast, The Living Reminders, and OutlanderCast.
There you go. And your website, again, is tallmommedia.com, right?
That's right. So you can find all of our podcasts there.
That's right. And I'll have all these links on the show post. The website to go to for all the shows are podcastengineeringschool.com. I'm really glad you listened. I hope you got a lot of information from this episode. And I can't wait to be recording episodes every week with different podcast producers, engineers, and other specialists, other technical experts about really how we can engineer our podcasts better. And if you can't tell, I love this. This is my life. I mean, Fractal Recording is my company. I produce podcast shows for other people, for networks and authors and everything. And again, Podcast Engineering School, just so you know, is going to start offering courses very soon if we haven't already. I'm not sure when I'm going to publish this episode, but Podcast Engineering School, it's podcast training to a whole different level with sound in mind, with actual audio quality and technical specificity in mind. I mean, I'm bringing audio engineering to the podcasting world through the Podcast Engineering School. So this has been great. And this song, by the way, this is a song that I produced a band way back in the mid-90s, I think, 94. And this was a band, they did a little demo. And I thought I would just play the whole song at the end of, this episode. I was thinking of playing it at the end of every episode, but it's a cool song. So thanks for listening to the Podcast Engineering Show. I'm Chris Curran. We'll see you next week. And until then, sound great.
It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. doesn't feel